You can get 25 gigabit per second internet to your home, symmetric, dedicated, not shared with your neighbors. That's not a tech demo, that's not a corporate pilot program. That's a product you can order today in Switzerland for a reasonable monthly fee. Meanwhile, in the United States, the country that worships the free market, most people have exactly one choice for high-speed internet. Speeds are slower, prices are higher, and the technology is often a decade behind. So how did the most free market country on earth end up with worse internet than a small alpine nation with heavy government regulation? The answer will probably surprise you. Let's lay out the situation clearly. In Switzerland, you can get 1 gigabit, 10 gigabit, or even 25 gigabit fiber internet delivered to your home. You have a dozen or more providers to choose from in most cities. Prices are competitive, and your connection is dedicated, meaning it's yours alone, not split with your neighbors. In the United States, if you're lucky enough to live somewhere with fiber, you probably have one provider, maybe two if you count the cable company charging the same price for slower speeds. And that gigabit you're paying for, it's often shared with 30 or more households on the same line. In Germany, a country famous for overregulation, the situation is surprisingly similar to the US. Fiber is limited to usually one provider and the connection is often shared. So the question isn't more regulation or less regulation. The question is, what kind of regulation? To understand why, you need to understand a concept economics call a natural monopoly. A natural monopoly is an industry where the infrastructure cost is so high and the cost of serving each additional customer is so low that the competition actually destroys value. Think about water pipes. Would it make sense to have 3 different water companies each digging up the street to lay their own pipes? You'd have 3 trenches, 3 times the disruption, 3 times the cost, and you'd still only use one pipe. The rational solution is obvious. Build the pipes once as a shared, neutral asset and let different companies compete to provide service over that infrastructure. That is how water works, that's how electricity works, and that's exactly how fiber internet works in Switzerland. But Germany and the United States did the opposite. In Germany, the approach was, let any company dig their own fiber. The result is called overbuild. Multiple networks running in parallel trenches, sometimes just meters apart. Billions of euros spent digging the same hole twice. Money that could have gone towards faster equipment, lower prices, or connecting rural areas wasted on redundant concrete. And Germany is heavily regulated, but the regulations focus on infrastructure competition, meaning different companies laying their own cables rather than forcing them to share what already exists. The result, the large incumbent Deutsche Telekom uses the existing regulatory system to its advantage. Small ISPs face high fees, procedural delays, and legal hurdles just to access basic duct information. Sharing duct is better than digging twice, but it's still wasteful compared to building it right once. The United States took a different path and got an equally bad result. Instead of overbuild, America created territorial monopolies. In most American cities, you can't choose your internet provider. You get whoever happens to serve your neighborhood. Comcast here, Spectrum there, AT&T in another block. Each company gets its own protected territory. Consumers get no real choice. This is marketed as competition, but it's not, it's a cartel. And because these networks are often built using shared architecture, technically called P2MP or point-to-multipoint, your gigabit internet is actually split between you and a dozen of your neighbors. At 8 p.m. when everyone streams video, that gigabit becomes 200 megabits or 100 or less. Your provider still charges you for a gigabit, they just don't mention the 31 other households sharing it. It gets worse. Even if a competitor wanted to enter the market, they often can't, because the central hub, the building where all the fiber lines from the homes converge, is privately owned by the incumbent. A competitor can't just install equipment there. They'd have to build their own entire network from scratch, digging up the same streets. So the incumbent has no incentive to improve. You can't leave, prices go up, speeds stay flat, and the free market produces exactly the opposite of what it promised. Now let's look at Switzerland and why it works. In Switzerland, the physical infrastructure, the fiber in the ground, is treated as a neutral shared asset. It's built once, often by a public or semi-public utility. Every home gets a dedicated 4-strand fiber line, point to point. Your fiber goes directly from your home to a neutral hub without being split with anyone else. That hub is open. Any internet service provider can connect there. Init7, Swisscom, Salt, a tiny local cooperative. They all have equal access to the physical line that goes into your home. This creates real competition. When you sign up with a provider, you give them your OTO number, the unique identifier on the fiber outlet in your apartment. That's it. No technical visit, no digging. Within days, your new service is active. And because your home has 4 separate fiber strands, you are not locked in. You can have one provider on one strand, a second provider on another. You can switch with a phone call. You can try a new provider without canceling your existing one. Competition happens on price, speed, and customer service, not on who owns the cable in front of your house. That is why Init7 can offer 25 gigabit, because all they have to do is run better equipment. The physical infrastructure is already there, already open, and already connected to your home. Here's the crucial part that most people miss. Switzerland didn't get here by accident. It didn't happen because telecom companies were generous. It happened because regulators forced it to happen, and then defended it when it was threatened. Back in 2008, when the industry agreed on a fiber standard at the government-organized roundtable, it was actually Swisscom, the incumbent, that pushed for the 4-fiber point-to-point model. They argued it was better than a shared architecture and that regulation would be needed to protect competition. The standard was set 4 fibers per home, point-to-point, open access to the physical layer. Then in 2020, Swisscom changed course. The company announced it would switch to a shared point-to-multipoint model for new network expansion. On paper, they said it was cheaper and faster to deploy. But the effect was clear. Competitors would lose direct access to the physical fiber. Instead of their own dedicated strand, they'd have to rent access from Swisscom at a higher layer, effectively becoming a reseller of Swisscom's infrastructure. The open, competitive system would collapse. A small ISP called Init7 filed a complaint with Switzerland's competitive authority, Comco. In December 2020, Comco issued a precautionary measure. Swisscom could not continue the point-to-multipoint rollout without guaranteeing the same physical access the original standard provided. In 2021, the Federal Administrative Court confirmed Comco's decision. In April 2024, Comco finalized its ruling and fined Swisscom 18 million francs for violating antitrust law. The result, Swisscom was forced back to the 4-fiber architecture. Competitors kept their direct physical access. The walled garden was stopped. This is what it looks like when regulators actually do their job. So here's the thing that trips people up. When people hear deregulated free market, they assume that it means competition. And when they hear regulation, they assume it means bureaucracies killing innovation. But the Swiss case proves the opposite. Letting incumbents build territorial monopolies, allowing wasteful overbuild, refusing to regulate natural monopolies, that's not a free market. That's just letting the most powerful player extract rent from everyone else. True markets require competition, but infrastructure is a natural monopoly. If you treat fiber like a consumer product, as if dozens of ISPs laying their own cables is normal market competition, you don't get a market, you get waste, or you get a company owning everything. The Swiss model understands this form from the start, building the infrastructure once as a shared, neutral asset, then let the services compete freely on top of it. This is not socialism, this is actually better capitalism. It puts competition where it adds value, on service, price, and innovation. It removes it from where it destroys value, from who owns the dirt under your street. So what can countries like the US and Germany learn from Switzerland? Here's what actually works. Mandate open access to physical infrastructure. Require incumbents to share fiber ducts with competitors at cost-based prices. This is exactly how electricity and water already works. Enforce point-to-point architecture. Every home should get dedicated fiber strands, not shared splitters. Competitors need access to the physical layer, not just the ability to resell bandwidth. Establish neutral fiber standards. Set national standards for multi-fiber deployment, the way Switzerland did in 2008. Give competition authorities real power. Fines need to be large enough to change behavior, not just symbolical enough to ignore. Support municipal fiber. Allow cities and towns to build their own markets when incumbents fail to serve residents. The technology exists, the money exists, other countries have already proven this works. What's missing is the political will to demand real competition instead of accepting the illusion of it. The next time someone tells you that regulation is the enemy of innovation and that free markets always produce the best outcomes, remember Switzerland. Remember that the country with the fastest residential internet in the world got there not by deregulating everything, but by being precise about where competition works and where it does not. And remember that 25 gigabit fiber connection to your home isn't a luxury, it's what happens when you build infrastructure correctly. If you found this interesting, share it with someone who argues the free market fixes everything. Links to all the sources are in the description below.